recorded. And I would ask everyone to welcome Ron. You're on, buddy.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. My name is Ron, and I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I'm going to start my talk today by talking about where I came from. I was born on a small farm up in the Finger Lakes region of New York, Skaneateles area to be exact. And there was no alcohol in our home at all. And that was by design. Neither of my parents drank. And so and it was never discussed. It wasn't a big deal. As I got into high school, I started sampling the odd beers and stuff. And by the time I got to college, I was doing pretty well with that. As a matter of fact, I lasted a year and a half before they asked me to kindly get the hell off campus. I went to a college that was affiliated with a church, and they had rules. No alcohol or women in the dorms. And the dean of men called me in and said I had to go, which I did. And, I was there. That was a shock to the system. Number one, to the family, because I left the farm and I'd gone off to college as a theater major, which made a lot of people scratch their heads. But I had had a little bit of a speech impediment or a stuttering thing when I was young, and I had a teacher in our school there in Skaneateles that kind of helped me get over that. And then she got me working with a summer stock company, and so I kind of fell into the theater type thing, which was a little strange as far as I think my family was concerned. Anyway, I went off to college. I did stuff. I actually went to auditions after my freshman year, and I got a job with a summer stock company working in North Carolina at a place called Under These Hills, where they have an outdoor drama. And I had to leave. But I got in trouble there drinking and actually doing some crazy things with a few of the local people from the Cherokee Nation. Actually, what we did was we shot a bear up on Clingman's Dome, and one of the guy's mothers cooked the ribs for our breakfast. Anyway, that was frowned upon by the people running the theater. And again, I was asked to leave. I went to New York. I ended up going back home. It was a rough time. And so what happened finally was my mother drove me to the Navy recruiting office and dropped me off. And so I ended up in the Navy, and I stayed there for 11 years. Didn't get thrown out or fired from there, because they could get along with my drinking without a problem. And so I was there for 11 years. I made advancements. I got up. I was in E6 when I finally got out. They didn't even want me to leave. They offered me instructor duty if I would stay. But by that time, I'd married a beautiful woman. And she wanted me out, so I took my discharge and went on my way. And what happened was, I worked a few jobs. I had borrowed some money and bought into a small marine construction outfit, and that lasted for a while. I was working at the boatyard. I had managed to mix a motorcycle with a hell of a lot of Bacardi Añejo rum And that combination came up against a Plymouth station wagon in a rather unruly fashion and ended me in the hospital with a leg where I had 6 breaks in an 8-inch span. Anyway, I kind of got through that, went, still drinking, went back to college, and I graduated. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree, and hardly remember that. Anyway, but I was kind of carrying on. I had by this time I had a lobster boat. I had been out working on the trawlers off George's Banks, old 85-foot wooden side trawler, and when I wasn't out on the trawlers, I was running my lobster boat in Narragansett Bay. That worked along for a while. The drinking kept progressing to the point where I was consuming a hell of a lot. Starting at around 5 in the morning when I would get up, I'd have a couple of drinks, head down to the boat, I would go work, be back in by 2 or 3. That went on till it got to the point where I wasn't even going out. I was going out down and sitting on the boat and basically drinking. And you know, generally misbehaving. I had there was a fellow had another boat right across the dock from me, and I was always trying to get him to take a drink, and he would never do it. His name was Roger. I remember that very well. He would never do it. And anyway, my drinking progressed until the point where my lovely wife had gone off to spend a week with some friends in Connecticut, and I was left alone to drink openly as I wanted to, because a lot of my booze was kept in the garage or in the cellar. And so I can recall what happened at the very end. And this is where I say I hit my moment of clarity, and I don't know today why it happened or how it happened. But I know I was sitting in our kitchen with a glass and a bottle of Bacardi, and I think I had some Cokes along with it, chase it. Anyway, I remember that this was my final bottle, because I had developed a habit of never opening my last bottle. I always had a reserve bottle hidden somewhere. Anyway, this was my last bottle that night. And I remember looking at the clock, and I saw that it was about 9:30. And I said to myself, I'm going to have to get to McGrath's liquor store, which was 4.5 miles away, because they close at 10, or I'm going to be out. And I sat there and I looked at the clock, and then, and I remember saying it, I said, fuck it, I'm not going to go. And I finished that bottle of rum and I went to bed. I woke up about 2 or 3 in the morning, sometime like that, pretty much a wild man. I thought I was just losing my mind, and I don't know why the next sequence of events took place. But I got out the telephone book and I got out the yellow pages and I looked up Alcoholics Anonymous and I dialed the number. Now, I want to say that prior to this time, I had never thought of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't even know they had meetings in our town. So this is why I say I don't know why these things happened. But anyway, I dialed AA, and what I got was a recorded message. And that really pissed me off. This was a goddamn emergency, and they gave me a recorded message. They obviously didn't understand the seriousness of the situation. So I hung up, And I figured I was losing my mind. Now, I did have a friend, we had a friend, who had been up in Butler Mental Hospital. She lived over in Narragansett, so I went over to see her and her husband. I was doing the right thing. I thought I was going crazy, so I was going to go talk to a person who I knew had been crazy for a while. This was somebody that could probably understand me. Well, I went over and talked to him, and she mixed up a pitcher of lemonade with a lot of sugar in it, was feeding me glasses of lemonade, and we were talking, and she said, Ron, she said, I don't think you're crazy. She said, I think you got a drinking problem. Can I make a phone call for you? I had no, I said, go ahead. She made the phone call and I got me in on the phone. And it was, of course, a landline back in those days. And I was talking to this guy named Tommy C. And he said, are you sober today? Have you had a drink today? And I said, no, I haven't. He said, can you stay sober today? And I said, well, I think so. I hope so. He said, where do you live? I said, I live in Snug Harbor. He said, okay. He said, I'll meet you at 6 o'clock at the corner of Succotash Road and Route 1. I said, okay. Well, I was there, and he picked me up, and he took me to my first AA meeting up in the whaling town of Wickford, Rhode Island. And I got in there, it was at I think it was a Baptist church, basement of a Baptist church. Anyway, I was, wasn't much of a coffee drinker back then, but I was trying to make up some tea and keep the hot water in the little styrofoam cup. And, trying to get the tea bag in and stuff. And I heard this voice behind me. And he said, I've been waiting for you. And I turned around, and it was Roger, the other fisherman that'd been right across the dock. And he'd been, at that time, he had 7 years in the program. So they, I stayed there at the meeting, I listened, and they introduced me to some other folks who were very well known in the area. And they kind of, 3 of them, Steve, David, and who was the third? I'll think of him in a minute. Anyway, they got me under their thumb, and I called them my committee. And I started going to meetings. I was going to 2 meetings a day. And that was lasting. Now this happened, and that day, when I was sitting there doing that, drinking that night in my kitchen, that was the 13th of July, 1977. Anyway, I stayed with them, and I kept going to meetings, I had a pretty, I had this little meeting system set up, and then they said to me, we're going to start a new meeting, we call it the How It Works meeting, and we want you to come be a member. And I already had my system that I felt safe in, so I was a little nervous about that, but I joined them. And then that became my home group. This went on for, I was sober, at least I wasn't drinking. And then, I want to watch the time here. One day I got a call from one of the professors at URI, where I had been to school and got my degree from. And he called me in. Now, I had been going up there during this year and doing some stuff with technical stuff with some of the foreign students and things. And he said to me, you seem to like working with these foreign students. He said, I have an offer for you. He said, but first, he said, I understand you've quit drinking. Well, the thought went through my head, how the hell did he know I drank? Well, of course, everybody in our town knew I drank. There was no, I was the only one confused about that. He said, we've got a project going in Portugal, and I need a research assistant. If you'll go to graduate school, get a graduate degree, I'll take you with me as a research assistant. And this was a USAID funded program. Well, I said, okay. I said, okay. And I went and I did that. Was gone for a year. My wife came with me. By this time when I had quit drinking, she decided it was okay to try and have a kid. She wasn't going to have one with me while I was juiced all the time. So anyway, we took our 7-month-old baby at that time, and off we went to Portugal. Worked for a year, came back still sober. Actually 12-stepped somebody while I was over there, got them sober. Anyway, came back and went back doing stuff with the university. And then I got a phone call, another one of these, I understand you're not drinking phone calls. And this was from somebody from a multinational organization. And they said, the phone rang at 5 o'clock in the morning. I picked it up, because they were calling from Europe. And I listened. And, I said hello, and then I listened. And I said yes. And then I hung up the phone. Now, we were right in bed. My wife turned to me. She said, "Who was that?" I said, "That was Dr. Johnson. They've just offered me a job in Indonesia." And I said, "Yes." And anyway, we went there. We ended up, I spent 8 years in Indonesia with that outfit. Then I spent 2 years in Sri Lanka. And I spent 15 years with them then in Rome, Italy. The whole thing is, during this period of time, especially, when I first, my parents still never spoke about the fact or addressed the fact that I didn't drink anymore. Drinking was still not discussed. And it wasn't discussed until 2 of my nephews ended up in AA. And that was when my parents opened up. And I got to learn that my great-grandfather on my mother's side was a notorious alcoholic, a notorious drunk, who was a huge man and caused lots of trouble. The other grandfather on my father's side had a nervous breakdown, they called it in those days, had to go to a sanitarium or something. And I recalled then that my grandmother had never even let anything in the house that came in a bottle, no drink, not even a Coca-Cola or anything. There was this phobia against people bringing drinks in. Well, things started to add up to me that there was probably something going on in the old gene system here that made me, fall easily prey to this ism. And so, but through good fortune and a lot of support from my wife, tremendous amount of support from my wife. As a matter of fact, 4 days ago, we celebrated our 55th wedding anniversary. And so she is, she was with me for 9 years before I got in the program. So about some things, her memory is probably fresher than mine is today. And so it was, that has been easy for me, this type of support. She has never said, "Why are you going to a meeting?" She has never said, "We got something else to do instead of you going to a meeting." That has never happened in the 45 plus years now that I've been in the program. I've been damn lucky, in that I have not had a slip, even though when I went overseas for long periods of time, in Indonesia, but there was not a lot of drinking going on there, except in the expat community. And I had the support of my wife. She was with me. I did not succumb. And so anyway, I feel very, very fortunate. And the thing is that today I'm retired. I've been retired for 22 years, or something like that. Maybe it's 20, just about, I think. Anyway, and all of this luck that's happened to me has happened because I've been sober, and my life has totally changed. So when I talk to young people or new people in the program, my theme is always the second chance, because I had a second chance in life. I had one life where I raised a lot of hell. I killed a lot of codfish and I caught a lot of lobsters. But there was a lot of chaos going on all that time. And this second part of my life, the second chance, has been much calmer, much more beneficial to me. And I was able to raise two wonderful daughters. And so I feel very, very fortunate. And I have it. I have AA to thank for it all, because it never would have happened. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. None of this would have come about had I not had the good fortune of experiencing what I call my moment of clarity, when I got to see things as I really was. And whatever caused me to change my pattern, I don't know. And I really don't care. What I'm thankful for is the fact that it did change and that I've been able to turn things around. And now I am going to resign from the position of speaker, and I am going to resort to my role as timekeeper, and I'm going to turn this back over to Courtney. So thanks everybody for sitting and listening to me ramble on.
Thank you so much, Ron. Appreciate your contribution. And we're going to open the floor up for people who would like to comment. And let me